Back here on HQ Spotlight, it is Monday, which means it is mock draft Monday time here on HQ Spotlight. Picks 1 through 18 are set for now. Our draft expert Mike Renner actually has a mock draft right now on CBSSports.com, and he says, quote, "Something tells me this is going to be an eventful draft season of trades for a number of reasons, but we're not going to go there. We got to keep it straightforward for the sake of this mock. So no trades today, but we're going to go through our latest mock with our very own Mike Renner and our NFL analyst JP Acosta. Great to see you guys. And we are starting at the top, number 1. We know the Raiders have that pick, and Renner, it is the Heisman winner and leader of the undefeated Hoosiers going off the board first.
Yes, Fernando Mendoza, he keeps passing test after test after test. In the playoffs now, he has more touchdowns than he has incompletions. So far, I think the only criticism you can even really levy against this season is that they're a very run-heavy offense. He has only 3 games with over 30 dropbacks so far this season, which once you get to the NFL, that's pretty much the low end of what you'll be asked to do. But go back last year, what he did at Cal, that was a pass-heavy offense. That was basically asking him every game to go out and win it for him. So I'm not really worried. If you're the Raiders, you're just happy as heck that a quarterback like this is there waiting for you.
Yeah, I think the Raiders will be happy with some of those numbers that we're seeing on the board there. So Fernando Mendoza goes off the board number 1 to the Raiders, which brings us to the number 2 overall pick, which is for the Jets. And JP, you have another quarterback, of course, in Dante Moore going to the Jets, and Jets fans, fingers crossed, that's what they have, hoping that this quarterback works out for them potentially.
Yeah, I think the biggest question here is if Dante Moore is returning to school. But if he does enter the draft, I do think he is a very precise. He has a lot of poise working downfield. He's a professional thrower of the football is how I like to describe him. He gets the ball up and down into receivers' hands on deep passes, and he meshes well with what Tanner Engstrand, the Jets offensive coordinator, really wants to do. So I think if Dante Moore is here at the 2nd overall pick, it's a home run.
Okay, so we have quarterbacks going 1 and 2. We want to bring in our very own Danny Carnell here to talk about this. So if Dante Moore does enter the draft here and he does not go back to school, what are your thoughts on Fernando Mendoza going 1, Dante Moore going 2?
So I think these two quarterbacks are miles apart as far as quarterback development and being ready to play early in their NFL careers. Because Fernando Mendoza's got a lot of playing film out there for you to watch, going back from his time at Cal and his experience at Indiana, and he's done it at a really high level, where you've got Dante Moore is really in his infancy. I mean, he had the year that he played at UCLA, but it wasn't great. He was a true freshman. Now he's played 1 full year of college football as the starter with these expectations on him at Oregon. I think he needs a lot more development, but I do think the expectation is coming out. Remember, Dylan Raiola committed to Oregon. We've seen that in the transfer portal. So that kind of read the tea leaves. It says that he's coming out, but I think this is going to require a lot of patience from the organization and from the fan base, because it's really hard to look at too many quarterbacks who have played just 1 year of college football and said, yep, they're going to automatically be ready to go. But when you're the number 2 overall pick, that will be the expectation. So I think it could be a bumpy start. The traits are off the charts, the upside, but I wish there was a little bit better, more consistent tape from Dante Moore in college. But unfortunately, if he comes out, I just don't think you'll see it. You'll be banking on the upside.
Yeah, man, if I'm a Jets fan, I don't want to hear bumpy start or patience at all, because it's been a long time. Renner, what do you think? Do you think these two quarterbacks are miles apart, or is the gap a little bit closer together in your eyes?
No, I lean towards what Danny said. I do think in terms of day 1 starting ability, I do think the gap is wide. But in the NFL, you're banking on what they could be, right? You're not playing for, no rookie quarterbacks ever won the Super Bowl. So you're not actually banking on that year 1 ability. You're banking on year 3 ability, year 4 ability. Can you get us to a Super Bowl then? And I think you watch Dante Moore and just the easiness with which he throws the football. I just keep going back to his accuracy, especially outside the numbers. It's as good as it gets in college football. I think it's even better than Fernando Mendoza. So there's just so much to like that. If the developmental arrow keeps pointing up, and from what we saw from his early days at UCLA to now at Oregon, it has, if it continues going that way, he could very easily be a franchise guy. Okay,
so back to the mock. We have quarterback going 1-2 in Fernando Mendoza and Dante Moore, which brings us to the number 3 overall pick, which is Arizona. And Mike, this is a team that has a lot of question marks, QB, coach, but what direction do you have them going here at number 3?
Yeah, to me, this is the tipping point of the draft if two quarterbacks come out or if Dante Moore comes out, because there's not a QB3 that's worthy of the number 3 overall pick. They would like it to be. There's not an offensive tackle worthy of the number 3 overall pick. They would love it to be, but there's just not. So you got to play the draft. And to me, Carnell Tate is a top 5 to 10 sort of wide receiver. Maybe he's not number 3 overall pick, Marvin Harrison Jr. sort of prospect, but he's a darn good one and exactly what they need in that receiving core. They need some verticality on the outside to pair with guys like Michael Wilson, who are more intermediate threats. Marvin Harrison Jr., who's more of an intermediate threat. Carnell Tate can get down the football field. He has been fantastic this year at doing just that, or was fantastic this year. I guess the season's over. And so adding him to whoever is there at quarterback just makes this offense more explosive.
So we have the wide receiver blueprint going from Ohio State over to Arizona. Number 4 here, we have the Titans and another team, JP, that has a lot of needs, wide receiver, edge rusher. Which way do you have the Titans going here with the number 4 overall pick?
I'm going defensive line. I took Rueben Bain here. I think that he is one of the more easy evals in this draft class. The power, the ability to win with his hands. I know a lot of people are worried about the arm length, but the way that he gets into the chest of opposing offensive linemen, the ability to win with his hand technique and hand usage, I think you can even reduce him inside a defensive tackle at times if you want to really get creative with him. But his strength in the run game has really stood out, and his ability just to win as a pass rusher and constantly cause havoc. When you look at a lot of defenses now, they want to try and get guys who win with power. Those are guys that translate early, like Jared Verse did. So Rueben Bain is going to be the easy fit here. I love the scheme fit for Tennessee.
All right, so at number 5, at one point we were thinking maybe the Giants would have that number 1 overall pick. As of now, sitting there at number 5, they have their quarterback of the future seemingly in Jackson Dart. So, Renner, we're actually going back-to-back Canes off the board here.
Yeah, I'm going Francis Mauioga, the right tackle for Miami, because of the desperation that the New York Giants have to keep Jackson Dart healthy. You look at when he has time and big pockets to work from, he's one of the most dangerous quarterbacks in the NFL this past season. But when he didn't, when he really has to rush through his processing, that's when things broke down. So just give him the best offensive line possible. And Francis Mauioga, like I said, there's not really a top 5 worthy offensive lineman, but he's probably the closest thing at offensive tackle and at least has 3 years starting at right tackle, which is exactly where you'll need him in New York.
All right, and then moving things along to number 6, we have Cleveland. And JP, you have them going with wide receiver Jordyn Tyson, who does have an injury history, but if he stays healthy, what is the ceiling for him at the next level?
I think he has potential to be a number 1 receiver in the NFL because of the body control, the grace, the fluidity that he plays with. He plays like a basketball player on the field when in terms of picking his spots in zone coverage, his ability to create separation. And when you look at this Browns team, they don't have anybody to create consistent separation. And I think Jordyn Tyson's ability to go up and get the ball, but also be that guy in the in-between areas of the field is going to mesh with whoever is playing quarterback and whoever's calling that offense. They need a bona fide number 1, and Jordyn Tyson's the best guy on the board.
So, Mike, I know we already sort of discussed what this quarterback class looks like, but what about the wide receiver class as a whole? How do you feel about it?
I think it's one of the better positions in this class. It's not, 2024 when we had Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze. It's not that strong, but I think you have 2 guys who are top 10 sort of picks and the 2 guys who have already come off the board, Carnell Tate, Jordyn Tyson, another couple who are likely first rounders. And so that year on year is a fairly strong class. And I just think across the NFL, you're seeing the value of wide receiver get buoyed. So they might actually go earlier than usual this year with other position groups that traditionally go first round, like edge, offensive tackle, being weaker classes.
Mike, JP, hang tight because we're just getting started for this mock draft. Want to quickly recap picks 1 through 6 here in the first round. Of course, we got quarterback Fernando Mendoza going to the Raiders to be their quarterback of the future. And then if Dante Moore does not go back to school, entering the draft, going to go to the Jets, Carnell Tate, Rueben Bain, and then you see it there 1 through 6. Jordyn Tyson rounding out the top 6 there, going to the Cleveland Browns. All right, coming up ahead on Spotlight, the Washington Commanders are on the clock in our mock draft. Do they go receiver with the number 7 overall pick? Our mock draft Monday continues ahead. Back here on HQ Spotlight as our mock draft Monday continues. We're picking things up with the Commanders at number 7. And Mike, we know Scary Terry, Debo getting a little older. So do the Commanders go wide receiver here or do they go elsewhere?
I think the top 10 wide receivers are cooked. So I have them going Arvell Reese, the Ohio State linebacker / edge. And if you go back to Dan Quinn's very first draft as DC of the Dallas Cowboys, they picked a similar sort of linebacker / edge in Micah Parsons. And that's the reason why Dan Quinn is now your head coach of the Washington Commanders. That pick right there. Arvell Reese could do similar things. Now, he's not the same type of athlete as Micah Parsons. He's actually more prototypical edge size in terms of length and frame. But he's a little more linear. He's more of a power strength player off the edge. So he's exactly what the Washington Commanders need. They just have no juice in that front seven. He has high end juice. All
right, so we have another Buckeye going off the board. Next up, number 8, we have the New Orleans Saints picking there. And JP, you have them taking Peter Woods, who is a projected top 5 pick at one point, but he goes off the board at 8 here.
Yeah, I'm having Peter Woods here. Again, he had one of the most frustrating 2025 tapes of anyone in this class because Clemson sort of just fell off a cliff this season. But I do think if you watch his 2024, he's one of the most powerful, one of the most violent defensive players in this class. His ability to win with his hands, his ability to explode up the field. And I think the Saints just need some more youth on that defensive side of the ball. I know they've already gotten off to a good start with that with Jonas Sanker, with Danny Stutzman in last year's draft. And I also think that they have a couple of really nice defensive players on defensive line. But getting another guy in Peter Woods to help turbocharge that defensive line a couple more times, I think it'll really help.
All right, and number 9, kind of weird to say this, but Kansas City picking in this spot. And Mike, we've seen Kansas City get steals in the draft before when they were picking way later on, but who did they take here in this number 9 spot?
I have been going Keldric Faulk, the Auburn defensive lineman. I think he has that long, large edge body type that Steve Spagnuolo loves at his defensive end. So he can either play on the outside or he can kick inside too, not only on pass rushing downs, but on run downs as well. He's one of the best run defenders in this draft class. So I just think from a body type perspective and from what he could be, the guy's just high end physical ability. This is a wild card type of pick for the Kansas City Chiefs that they can take a big shot on.
So we know it was certainly an off year for Kansas City. JP, do you think the biggest need here with this draft pick would be to address the defense for KC at this point?
I think so, given the ability of Patrick Mahomes to sort of make everybody better. And I think this offensive class has a lot of talent on the later rounds. In rounds 2, round 3, you can find a very good receiver on day 2. But I think the defensive talent starts to fall off a little bit. And I think for Kansas City, they need to start varying up the body types, the youth that they have on that side of the ball, especially on the defensive line. I thought they did a good job of that by drafting Omar Norman-Lott before his injury this season. So I think as long as they continue to add more impact players up front, they have been sort of hamstrung by the pick of Felix Anudike-Uzomah a few years ago, and they weren't able to find that next high-quality edge rusher. So Keldric Faulk here makes a lot of sense when it comes to the athleticism, the high upside swing. He's still really young, but his length, his strength is going to play really well in Spags' defense.
All right, speaking of teams that need to address their defense, that brings us to the Cincinnati Bengals that are picking number 10 overall here. JP, this is going to be the 3rd Buckeye to go off the board within the top 10, this time going to Cincinnati.
Yeah, I think it's Caleb Downs here at Cincinnati. I think Ohio State had a pretty good defense, given how many guys went in the top 10. He is one of the best players in this draft class overall. His ability to play off the roof as a safety, you can play him inside as a nickel. He doesn't miss tackles. I think he can make enough plays on the ball when he's back at deep safety. And I think for the Bengals, they just need impact players in the secondary. Outside of DJ Turner, they didn't have anybody who could make a lot of tackles, not a lot of production on the ball. And I think Caleb Downs just knows how to play football, and he knows how to play winning football. And I think that's something that the Bengals need on that side of the football. Caleb Downs, I'm going to speak this pick into existence until it happens.
Yeah, I would agree with you, JP, that Ohio State defense is probably pretty good. I think we can make that assumption. Number 11, we got the Miami Dolphins. Boy, Mike Renner, another team that has certainly a lot of things to figure out here. But what move do you have Miami doing at this spot in the draft?
I have them going Utah offensive lineman Spencer Fano. I think you could play either tackle or guard at the next level. And, well, the Dolphins, they could use maybe either a tackle or a guard. They just need help along this offensive line. As we saw last year, when guys went down, there was no depth whatsoever on this offensive line. So it will make whoever's life who is playing behind center a lot easier. And I think Fano is just the kind of athlete that fits in with the other guys along this offensive line and lets you be versatile offensively.
All right, number 12, we have the Dallas Cowboys picking here. And man, I was saying Cincinnati's defense needs serious work, and JP, the Cowboys, even more so, need serious work on the defensive side of the ball. So how do they address that here?
I have him addressing the linebacker spot, going Sonny Styles from Ohio State. Again, that Ohio State defense is pretty good, and I think Sonny Styles has a really strong case to be the best of the bunch. His ability at 6'4", 240, he's a former safety. He has the range to play downhill as a linebacker, stacking and shedding, but he also can play backwards and being good in coverage. I think where Dallas really struggled is they lack juice in that linebacker room outside DeMarvion Overshawn. I don't think Kenneth Murray is going to be on this team for much longer, so you get a guy like Sonny Styles in there, and you pair him with Overshawn, and you immediately have what might be the fastest linebacker group in the NFL and the rangiest linebacker group in the NFL. I love Sonny Styles' game, and I think this would be a perfect pick for Dallas.
All right, so Renner, we just talked about 4 Ohio State players that are going within the top 12. So at the Combine, everything leading up to the draft, are all eyes going to be on these Buckeyes here that we just discussed?
They are, and we might have some other guys that could even go in the first round for this team. They could challenge for the record for first rounders. It was such a loaded defense this year for Ohio State. Unfortunately, what we're not talking about, though, for the Buckeyes is offensive linemen. That's unfortunately what did them in when it was all said and done.
And Jeremiah Smith, we want to remind you, would probably be pick number 1, but he has another year of eligibility, so we will certainly be talking about him most likely in the draft to come ahead. Let's get a look at 7 through 12 here in our Mock Draft Monday, the first round. Again, we had 3 Buckeyes going off the board within the top 10, 4 in the top 12. Arvell Reese, Caleb Downs, Carnell Tate there. So Sonny Styles rounding out the top 12 here, going to the Dallas Cowboys as they're one of the teams addressing the defensive side of the ball. So coming up here on our Mock Draft Monday, the Rams are on the clock. Is the heir apparent to Matthew Stafford in this draft class? We're going to discuss coming up next right here after the break. You're watching HQ Spotlight on CBS Sports Network. It is our Mock Draft Monday. We've already gone through picks 1 through 12. Here's a quick recap on 1 through 6 from Mike Renner and JP Acosta. We've got some teamwork going here for our mock draft on a Monday. Fernando Mendoza, no surprise, going off the board first to the Raiders as their quarterback of the future. And then it goes quarterback with Dante Moore going off the board second to the Jets. Moving it along to pick 7 through 12, we got Arvell Reese out of Ohio State going to the Commanders. Actually, 3 Ohio State Buckeyes going off the board in 7 through 12 with Caleb Downs going to the Bengals and then Sonny Styles to the Dallas Cowboys. All right, JP, Mike Renner, welcome back, guys. And we're picking things up with the Rams here, who got this pick at number 13 via the Atlanta Falcons. So, Mike, what is the pick for the Rams?
I've been going Tennessee cornerback Jermond McCoy. He's a guy, he's one of the most interesting prospects in this draft class because he didn't play this past fall. He tore his ACL last January, so hasn't played a snap of football, but hopefully going to be back and testing this spring. But when I go back to his sophomore tape and just compare that to previous sophomore tapes I've seen at the cornerback position, it's about as good as guys like Patrick Surtain, Derek Stingley, these guys who go top 10 at corner. It's just we didn't get to see the next season from Jermond McCoy. And for the Rams, who have this massive need at corner and they really lack size at that position, I would take the swing on a guy like McCoy, whose upside, what he could be if he comes back fully healthy, is elite at that position.
All right, so the Rams addressing the corner position. Next up, we have the Baltimore Ravens picking at number 14 overall. JP, all I'm going to say is go Gators.
That's right. We got a Gator up here, Caleb Banks, defensive tackle. And I think this is an interesting pick for the Ravens because you don't really know what's going to happen with Nnamdi Madubuike's injury. He was out for the rest of the season with a neck injury that it sounded like former Ravens coach John Harbaugh said was a little more serious than initially believed. So if he's not able to go in 2026, you have an immediate issue at defensive tackle. Caleb Banks is a little bit older, still coming off an injury, but when you go and watch the LSU tape this year, you go and watch the Tennessee tape this year, you can see a truly dominant player in all 3 facets of the game. I think against the run, against the pass, he uses his length really well. So I think it's going to really help this Ravens defensive front gain that edge back that they really lacked this season.
All right, now at number 15, we have the Bucs, and man, this was a team that just dealt with so many injuries throughout the season, really the last 2 seasons. So, Renner, what do you have them addressing here, picking at number 15?
I have them going guard Vega Ioane out of Penn State. I think that was the biggest issue offensively outside of Baker Mayfield, was the guard position there. And putting him at left guard right next to Tristan Wirfs really locks down the blind side of whoever is playing quarterback in Tampa Bay for the next decade or so. I think he's that good as a pass protector. He allowed only 4 pressures all season long for Penn State. And for the Tampa Bay Bucs, if you can just get that front 5 in front of the quarterback set, you are going to have a high-end offense for a long time, given what they've drafted recently at wide receiver.
All right, and moving things along, number 16, we have the Jets picking here. Their second pick in the first round. Remember, this one comes from the Indianapolis Colts. We have them going Dante Moore at number 2. So, JP, now what do they do at number 16?
The best thing you can do for a quarterback is get him some help. I'm going to go Makai Lemon here from USC. I think this is one that I'm, again, manifesting into existence for this draft. I think he is a perfect fit between what Garrett Wilson already does and what A.D. Mitchell already does. Lemon is not going to be the biggest guy. He's not going to be the fastest guy, but he knows how to play football. He knows how to create separation in the middle of the field. He's tough after the catch. And I think that would just blend so well in what Tanner Engstrand wants to do offensively, of course, coming from Detroit, where they emphasize yards after the catch. I think Makai Lemon fits really well in that in-between area for the Jets, and I think that he just gives them another layer to an offense that could go from really bad to at least passable in 2026 with a new quarterback and some new receivers.
So, Renner, what do you think? If it is Makai Lemon and Dante Moore, what is the trajectory and how much does this help this team that was really, really bad this past season?
It could turn around quickly. And now, I said earlier, Dante Moore isn't maybe day 1 ready, but by year 2, with all the young talent they have, whether it's Garrett Wilson, Adonai Mitchell, who they added at wide receiver, that offensive line that actually looked good this year for the first time in a while for the Jets, things could turn around really quickly. That could be a high-end offense very soon here with all those guys they've added. And the Makai Lemon fit, it's too perfect for the Jets. If he's there at 16, I'm running the card in.
All right, and JP, we know this was all part of the Sauce Gardner trade, so the Jets really stacking up in picks for this season and next season. So what does that look like, down the line, not only for this season, but maybe the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years for the Jets?
I think given the identity of what Aaron Glenn comes from in Detroit and how Detroit rebuilt that team into what they are now, I think that's what they're going for. They have 2 picks this year. They have 3 picks next year. They're trying to say that it's going to take a long time to rebuild, but if they hit on all those picks, you could really set up your roster to contend in 2027, 2028. You could really get that team going, especially if you find the right quarterback. And I think if you get started here with Dante Moore, Makai Lemon, you could immediately turbocharge that offense. You have to work a little bit on the defense, and that might come along a little later, but I do think if you get those 2 guys early, I think you're going to set your offense up for a long, sustained success.
All right, you mentioned Aaron Glenn, so we're going to his former team in the Detroit Lions, who are picking number 17 overall. And Renner, you have them addressing the edge position here.
I'm going defensive end, David Bailey out of Texas Tech, probably the best athlete in this defensive end class. He's maybe more of a true pass rush only type of guy, but just watched the Lions last year, and every opposing offense, all they did was just account for Aiden Hutchinson and knew that if you did, you were going to have time as a quarterback. So that won't be the case if you get a guy like David Bailey in there who can be opposite Aiden Hutchinson and still be a wrecking ball on his own. So I think defense, specifically along that defensive line, is still the biggest need for this Lions team.
All right, so Lions picking their David Bailey out of Texas Tech. Next up, we have Minnesota with a number 18 overall pick. And JP, you have Notre Dame star Jeremiyah Love going off the board here. So tell me more about this pairing and what this could mean for Minnesota.
This means juice. If you don't got juice, you got to get out the kitchen. I think Jeremiyah Love has the explosiveness as a runner and a receiver to really turbocharge this Minnesota run game that I think lacked a little bit of explosiveness this season. Aaron Jones is getting up there in age a little bit. Jordan Mason's a little bit more of the thunder. They need some lightning, and I think Jeremiyah Love has the ability to hit the big play. His creativity at the second level when it comes to making guys miss is super fun to watch. It's like watching a video game character. Like you're controlling him in College Football 26. He's got some of the coolest hurdle moves I think I've seen in an NFL draft prospect in a while. So you get this guy on the Vikings who already have an established core of receivers. I think this offensive line can be good when healthy. He can immediately help, give them a boost.
Renner, we can't ignore the obvious that there is Notre Dame merch behind you, right? So, yep, there we go. Notre Dame, got some Packer stuff back there, but mainly Notre Dame. So with Jeremiyah Love, do you think this is a guy that's going to really excel at the Combine, given that, he was dealing with some injuries down the stretch of the regular season?
I think he's a guy who's going to skip the Combine because that's how good of a prospect he is, right? Ashton Jeanty skipped the Combine. I think he's seen that highly. We'll probably see him at his pro day, and I expect that 40 time to start with 4.3. I mean, he has real deal wheels dating back to his high school track days. So this is the kind of running back that is making a difference across the NFL, a James Cook type, a Jahmyr Gibbs type, the guy that if you forget about him, you give him a crease, all of a sudden that 5 to 10 yard gain can turn into 60.
It's a sick hat back there, too. I didn't notice that until this moment, Renner. All right, 13 through 18 in the books for our mock draft here. I want to quickly recap 13 through 18. Of course, we got Caleb Banks out of Florida going to the Baltimore Ravens, David Bailey, and then Jeremiyah Love going to the Minnesota Vikings. More HQ Spotlight coming up next. Our mock draft continues here on HQ Spotlight with Mike Renner and JP Acosta. Guys, we're picking things up at number 19, where the Carolina Panthers are on the clock, and this is a team that finally got to the playoffs for the first time since 2017. So, Renner, what do the Panthers do here? They're not picking in the top 5 or 10 for the first time in a minute.
That's a good thing, but it also makes your life a little harder as a GM. You don't have an obvious pick sitting there for you. So I have him going TJ Parker, the Clemson defensive end. He had a very disappointing season. You go back and look at preseason mocks. He was another Clemson guy that was probably in a lot of top 10s. Now he's not going to be after what he put on tape this past fall. But for the Carolina Panthers, I think you hope you can reclaim him. They already had a guy who kind of had that sort of trajectory last year in Nick Scorton, and he turned out pretty good as a rookie. But even with him, you were still second worst in the NFL in terms of pressure rate. You still need to address the edge. Even if those guys you drafted on day 2 last year hit, you could still use a third option there. TJ Parker could be that.
All right, so number 20, America's team, they're back again. Shout out to Micah Parsons. So they obviously addressed the defense with pick 12, so I'm guessing they do that again, JP.
I think most of their picks should be on defense in this draft class. I have them going Avieon Terrell here, cornerback from Clemson. We talked a lot about how some of the Clemson defenders were a little disappointing this year. I don't think Avieon Terrell was. I think he is the all-captain team of the dog in him for this draft class. He is always fighting through the catch point. He's always going to try and make a play on the ball. He has 5 forced fumbles this season as a corner, and I think this allows for the Cowboys to move DaRon Bland back into the nickel where he actually can really shine. And so you have sort of this young and interesting defensive back rotation with Savon Ravel, with Avieon Terrell, and you also have DaRon Bland at nickel. I think this gives him a lot of versatility, but Terrell is always going to fight through the ball. He's always going to fight through contact, and he plays a lot bigger than he actually is, and that's going to stand out a lot in the NFL.
That was what, the captain of Got That Dog in Him team? Is that what you said? Okay, I love that.
That's right.
I would like to see that on all of your draft analysis moving forward when appropriate. Next up at number 21, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. A reminder, this mock is coming out prior to the Texans-Steelers playoff game, but as it stands right now, Mike, they're picking at number 21. So what do you have Pittsburgh doing?
I'm going Texas A&M wide receiver KC Concepcion. To me, he's one of the best separators in this draft class. His hands have been inconsistent over the course of his career, and his size is just probably slightly below average, but guy gets open. You flip on the tape, and it's just he's running away from guys left and right. He's a full tree sort of route runner and just a plan B to DK Metcalf's plan A there in terms of a guy that you can rely on third downs to go win a route, go get a bucket.
Yeah, because certainly whether it's Aaron Rodgers for one more year or whoever, they need more weapons there in Pittsburgh. Brings us to number 22, where we have the LA Chargers. JP coming off of that playoff loss to the Patriots, and you have them going corner here.
I have him going corner. I have him going Mansoor Delane from LSU. The fluidity, the hip movement, the ability to play an off or man coverage really stands out with Delane in this draft class. His ability to be productive on the ball. And I think that's going to really stand out in this Chargers defense that requires a lot of hip fluidity. It requires a lot of reading out coverages. And I think his ability to play with the ball in front of him is going to really translate well into this defense. They could use some more impact players in the secondary. I know that Justin Herbert just got folded in half by the offensive line on Sunday, but I have them going defense here in the first round.
All right, yes, you bring up an excellent point, JP. So, Renner, how do they not go O-line after we saw what happened to Justin Herbert in that game?
Well, ideally, you have your tackles that you drafted both in the top 15. You have them back healthy, right? They have two fantastic all-pro caliber tackles. It really is the interior where more often than not, center and guard you can find on day two. So I would not expect the Chargers to necessarily go offensive line just because of what we saw there. They could even address it in free agency because they have the most cap space in the NFL as well.
All right, so that brings us to Philly, the Super Bowl champs from last year. They just were eliminated by the Niners, picking at number 23. And Renner, they are addressing the O-line here in this mock.
Yeah, after Howie Roseman kind of strayed from his type last year and went with the non-value positions, I think it's back to the trenches, back to business as usual. And they're going Max Iheanachor, the Arizona State offensive tackle. He's a guy who didn't play football until he got to junior college, so only 5 years of football under his belt in his entire life. And when you watch him play, he looks like the guys that play at a high level in the NFL. He just doesn't have the seasoning. That kind of sounds like a Jordan Mailata who they hit on before. And with Lane Johnson still playing, but up there in age, this gives you kind of time to develop him to be that heir apparent on the right side.
All right, as we're making our way, we're at number 24, where this is the Cleveland pick via our Jacksonville Jaguars, JP. So how are you going to feel down the stretch looking at a graphic of what that trade turned into? What do you have here at number 24 for Cleveland?
For 24 for Cleveland, I have Caleb Lomu, offensive tackle from Utah. He's young. He's really athletic. I think he can move in space. And he has a lot of technical refinement for a guy that, like you said, is so young. And I think that's going to really play well in Cleveland, where they have to replace both tackle spots potentially. They might have to replace 4 of their starting 5 offensive linemen in this offseason. So I think if you start with getting the youth movement up front with Lomu, I can also see Georgia tackle Monroe Freeling here as well. But I think Lomu might be a little more technically refined than Freeling. So I think if you get an offensive tackle and a wide receiver out of this class, even though you're not able to get one of the top quarterbacks, I think you're going to come away really confident in yourself if you're a Browns fan.
All right, Mike, JP, hang tight as we get through the latter half of this mock here on HQ Spotlight. Want to quickly recap picks 19 through 24. We have the Carolina Panthers taking TJ Parker out of Clemson. The Pittsburgh Steelers, who for now ahead of that Texans-Steelers playoff game, are picking at number 21, addressing the wide receiver position. And then you see it here, Mansoor Delane going to the Chargers. So the Chargers addressing the corner position. We still have more to get through. Coming up, we were hitting the home stretch of our mock draft here on HQ Spotlight. What about the Bears? What are they going to do next? We have picks 25 through 32 coming up. You're watching HQ Spotlight, our mock draft Monday here. We're down to our final 8 picks in our mock draft, and we have Chicago picking number 25 overall. Man, this has been a fun team to watch so far. So, Renner, how do they build on top of that through the draft for the future here with this pick at number 25?
Yeah, I have them addressing defense. Ideally, they would get a pass rusher here, but it's late in the first round. Sometimes beggars can't be choosers. So I have them going actually with a safety, Emmanuel McNeil-Warren out of Toledo, who, I don't know if he's a first rounder for everybody, but I think he's perfect for the Bears because he is a turnover specialist. 5 picks in his career, 11 forced fumbles. He's about as good a peanut punching safety prospect as I've seen in my decade plus of doing this. And if you watch the Bears this year, they are the best in the NFL, led the NFL in turnovers. This is another guy that can add to those. And with Kevin Byard entering free agency this year at 32 years old, this is your replacement for him.
All right, number 26, JP, it feels cruel that we have to talk about Buffalo and what they're going to do here, but man, they're picking number 26 overall. So they got the guy, the superhero in Josh Allen. So what else do they need to build around him?
I'm going to the defensive side of the ball. I'm going linebacker Josiah Trotter from Missouri. If you're looking for a comparison for Josiah Trotter, look no further than his father, Eagles linebacker Jeremiah Trotter Sr. His ability to get off of blocks, be a sledgehammer in the run game. I think the youth on the Bills defense could be really set up for the future with Deon Walker, with Max Harrison at corner, and Trotter in the middle of the defense. His instincts playing the run is going to really help, especially for a Bills defense that has really struggled in the run game. So Josiah Trotter here would be an incredible pick for the Bills because he just fits the mentality of the Buffalo Bills and what they want to be.
All right, so Trotter out of Mizzou going to Buffalo. That brings us to San Francisco with the 27th overall pick here. And Mike Renner, you have the Niners actually addressing the tight end position.
I've been going Kenyon Sadiq, the Oregon tight end. I think this is a dream pick for the San Francisco 49ers. Even if George Kittle comes back healthy next year, which is a big if after he tore his Achilles over the weekend, that's, a 6 to 9 month injury at least. Even if he's back, though, I think they're complementary enough that both can be on the football field. We see what Sean McVay, we see what Clint Kubiak's doing in that division with multiple tight end sets. I think these two guys can coexist, and Sadiq is an awesome move blocker. Maybe not a great inline guy because he's a little bit on the shorter side, but when he's on the move, he can find and attack guys, and I think that would be put to good use in this 49ers offense.
All right, next up, we got to talk about Houston with the number 28 overall pick. And JP, you have them going offensive line, which was a big part of their troubles early on in the first half of the season.
Yeah, I'm going Kadyn Proctor here from Alabama, but he's not playing tackle in Houston. I think he's going to play guard. I think at the NFL level, his lack of range and mobility is really going to help him kick in, force him to motivate him to kick inside, where he's going to be a little bit better with using his power, with using his strong hands, and his ability to get a grip on guys. His ability in the run game is going to be really strengthened in that run game, and I think Houston just needs to find the 5 best offensive linemen they can and put together a group in front of C.J. Stroud. I think Proctor is a good athlete when it's focused on the interior. I think he struggles a little bit when guys get to his outside shoulder, so you minimize that by letting him play guard, and I think you really focus on his ability to be a knockout puncher in the run game at guard.
Yeah, you got to protect C.J. Stroud. Now we have the Rams. They are back. Their second pick in the first round at number 29. So we had them going corner in this mock at 13. So, Renner, what do they do at number 29?
I have them sticking in the defense and going linebacker Jake Golday from Cincinnati. This is an awesome linebacker class. I think a bunch of guys could go in the first round because they are the kind of athletes that usually go in the first round. And the ones you want to use first round picks on are the ones that can blitz like defensive ends. And I think that's the biggest thing I see when I watch Golday, who literally started his career at defensive end before transitioning off the ball. And at 6'5", 240, he plays overhang in Cincinnati. He plays like that's like called the NFL slot role, but is called overhang in college, where, sometimes he's running down the football field with slot receivers and it looks like he can hang with them. He moves really, really well. And for a Rams defense that over the middle of the football field has had some issues this year, I think he'd be a big upgrade there in coverage.
All right, we're down to the final 3 picks, and that brings us to the Patriots, who are picking at number 30. JP, what do you have them doing here?
I have them going Cashius Howell, edge from Texas A&M in this first round. I think Mike Vrabel's never been one to really stand by a lot of the NFL rules when it comes to arm length, when it comes to size at edge. He drafted Harold Landry. Caleb Tyson isn't exactly a prototypical edge, and he's also a free agent for the Patriots this season. Howell is a bona fide pass rusher. I think he wins with bend. I think he wins without getting to the outside shoulder of the offensive tackle, and I think you're able to play him on pass rushing downs early in his career and hope he can grow into a more full-fledged run defender as he continues to get more reps in the NFL. But his growth from being at Bowling Green, putting on more size, going to Texas A&M, and immediately producing in the SEC, I think that's going to get him a lot of looks in the first round.
All right, finally here, the final 2 at number 31, we have the Broncos. And Renner, you have them going with Denzel Boston. So what could he bring to this Denver squad?
He can bring some size and some ball skills. I think that's what Boston has that outside of Courtland Sutton, you really see be an issue on this Broncos offense. They have a lot of drops outside of Courtland Sutton. They have a lot of miscommunications, and you just can't attack into tight windows, into contested windows the way he loves to do with Courtland Sutton, Bo Nix does with anyone else on that offense. So Boston immediately gives you a number 2 there that you can rely on in those chain moving situations that he force feeds Courtland Sutton probably a little bit too much at this point. So I think they need another weapon on the outside, and the sort of role and the sort of prototype is a guy like Denzel Boston.
All right, finally here we have the Seahawks with the final pick in the first round, picking at number 32. And JP, you have them going with C.J. Allen. Tell us more about this potential pairing.
Yeah, I have him going C.J. Allen, linebacker from Georgia. He is a bona fide run defender. He is super young. He's going to be 20 years old throughout this draft process. And whenever you're the green dot, the Mike linebacker at Georgia wearing number 3, I'm going to have the attention. I think C.J. Allen is a really impressive run defender, plays with instincts, has sideline to sideline range. And I think he's grown a lot as a pass defender. So for Seattle, you can play him where Drake Thomas is playing right now, and then he can eventually grow into the role that Ernest Jones has in the middle of Mike McDonald's defense.
Renner, JP, we certainly appreciate it. Our mock draft Monday is complete. Let's quickly recap it for you. 1 through 6, of course, we got Fernando Mendoza going off the board first, number 1 overall to the Raiders. Dante Moore going to the Jets. 7 through 12 here, Caleb Downs out of Ohio State going to Cincy to help them fix that defense there in Cincinnati. 13 through 18 here. Makai Lemon, that is the second pick for the Jets, going there out of USC to potentially bolster up that offense after they took Dante Moore with the number 2 overall pick. Picks 19 through 24 here. KC Concepcion out of A&M making his way to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then finally, if we get a look at those final 8 picks here, 25 through 32, it all rounded out with C.J. Allen out of Georgia going to the Seattle Seahawks. And of course, you can hear the fellas on Pushing the Pile, recapping every NFL wildcard game, and of course, discussing their biggest takeaways from each matchup. You can watch right now by scanning that QR code.